You want the day to obey you, then seize the first hour as if it were a crown you cannot afford to lose. Imagine Thomas Edison folding his sleeves before dawn, not because he loved light, but because he worshipped the solution. Imagine Henry Ford standing ankle, deep in mud as a factory awoke, listening to the cadence of machines like a conductor reading a future score. There is a particular magic that lives in the first 60 minutes after you rise. A sovereign hour when the world is quiet, the phone is mute, and your nervous system is pliable. What you do in that hour is not a ritual of vanity. It is lawmaking. It sets the grammar of the day. It writes the first line of the plot, and it determines whether you will be author or audience. If you allow those moments to be surrendered to distraction, you will spend the rest of your life negotiating with other people's priorities. But if you take them, if you build a fortress around them, the day will bow. This is not about sentiment. It is strategy disguised as piety. Napoleon Hill taught us that desire fixed and focused becomes magnetic. The modern translation is simple. Structure the morning so that the first act is the hardest thing made easy, and then watch the rest fall into obedient alignment. The body responds to cues. The mind obeys grammar. The world answers evidence. Put your pen where your pillow is still warm. Put your prototype on the bedside table. Make the first sound you hear be the click of a draft saving, not the ping of someone else's drama. The first hour is an ecosystem: lighting, posture, language, and the single smallest ritual that, repeated, rewires identity. It could be 5 lines of writing, 3 sales calls, 20 minutes of concentrated code. A short run that clears cortisol like a broom sweeps dust, or a carefully rehearsed 10-second power statement you say into the mirror until your voice stops from lying to you. Do one high-leverage thing every morning without negotiation, and you begin to accumulate a proof that your future self can no longer rationally ignore. Belief is not a mystical gift handed by fate. It is a ledger you fill with receipts. The first hour is where you collect those receipts each day. When you rise and complete a meaningful microtask, you are not merely closing a checkbox. You are depositing evidence into the social account called capability. Carnegie did not charm the world because he was charming. He built trust by delivering favors and keeping promises minute by minute. Edison did not have faith in filament because he dreamed. He had faith because his lab produced filament after filament until the evidence outweighed doubt. Make the morning a factory of micro-evidence, publish a line. Send the email, ship a single piece of deliverable. Visibility converts belief into currency. The more public your tiny wins, the more permission you earn in the eyes of the market, and crucially, in your own nervous system. Clarity is your scalpel. Without it, you will be busy and impotent. So before the sun climbs, declare with surgical specificity what completion means today. Not work on the project, but finish the first 500 words of Chapter 1. Or send proposals to 5 targeted clients, or prototype the landing page and test the headline. Give your day sensory termini, a number, a time, a headline, the feel of the signed contract in your pocket. The brain reacts to details the way a radar reacts to a blip. Either it locks on or it wanders. Anneal your goals into sensory objects, and your body will begin to route attention toward them automatically. Reverse, engineer the big outcome into a single dominant task for the morning. Everything else is optional noise. Discipline is not deprivation. It is a covenant with your future. The person who allows the first hour to dissolve into black hole scrolling has chosen short pleasure over long power. Discipline is converting temptation into policy. It is saying, no notifications before my ritual, and enforcing it like law. The great makers understood this implicitly. Ford enforced schedules until the factory made habit out of execution. Lincoln read until the fatigue of others revealed his steadiness as capacity. Your disciplinary architecture must be elegant and unarguable. a 2-HAR block, a whiteboard with 3 unavoidable tasks. A rule that your most important work is done standing if need be, because standing reduces comfort and increases clarity. Make the practice sacred, not because you enjoy suffering, but because you respect the results that suffering curates. Action requires hunger and method. The first hour is both a test and a teacher. You either show up or you find an excuse to defer your life. Action must be selective. The world is full of motion mistaken for progress. The brave choose the lever that moves the machine. Pick the one activity that, if completed this morning, will make the rest of the day easier or irrelevant. Do it in session bursts. 40 minutes on, 10 minutes off. So your attention is intense and your output is measurable. Fail fast in the small ways. The morning is your laboratory. Ship a rough cut. Measure reaction. Iterate by noon. Speed of iteration gives you narrative. Narrative gives you leverage. The market, the audience, and your collaborators are not kinder to perfect plans than they are to visible progress. They respond to evidence, not intention. Language is the architecture of reality. Speak in the present tense to the version of you that has already completed the task. I am done has more gravitational pull than I will try. Napoleon Hill's autosuggestion becomes a tactical tool when you read a short, specific declaration out loud each morning. 5 sentences that describe the completed day in sensory terms. Read it before you check the world. The cadence of those sentences becomes an incantation of obligation. The body registers the grammar and composes the day to avoid cognitive dissonance. Words are not mere ornaments. They are the scaffolding on which action climbs. Gratitude is the lever that compounds morale. Begin your hour by naming 3 small, unarguable things that are already true. A supportive contact, a skill you own, a micro. Win from yesterday gratitude used like a ledger guides resource allocation. Carnegie gave with purpose because generosity invested in returns. Be intentional in whom you thank and how gratitude becomes reputational capital when made visible. Use it to fuel reciprocity and accelerate momentum. The first hour that contains gratitude is an hour that turns scarcity into possibility. Adaptability and resilience are trained in the quiet mornings because that is where you can prototype calm. When the world decides to demand your attention midday, your morning practice will be the reservoir you draw from. Design micro experiments in those hours. New formats, new pitches, different rhythms, and measure the outcome. When a plan breaks, you will not panic. You will have rehearsed repair. Build a habit of fast triage, an hour to diagnose, a day to test, a week to iterate. Recovery is not spiritual stoicism. It is engineered response. Lincoln's many public defeats became mere steps because he rehearsed recovery. Reading, thinking, re-engaging. Until resilience was a muscle and not an accident. Learning must be active, not passive. And the first hour is the best vessel for this. Read a single chapter, write a single summary, teach a single idea aloud. Turn ingestion into output, digest, then export. The person who stacks learning into action composes advantage over time. Make 30 minutes of deliberate practice non-negotiable. Turn the morning into a crucible where ideas are forged into skill. The first hour is an hour of identity. The small acts you perform there, vivid, consistent, visible, become the evidence your self-image is built from. If you are the person who finishes a page every morning, your identity will tilt toward being a writer. If you are the person who launches one small experiment weekly, you will become the kind of entrepreneur who experiments. Identity is not declared. It is accrued. Each morning action is a deposit into that account. Do not underestimate the symbolic. Create simple markers, a lamp you turn on only for work, a jacket you wear when shipping, a small notebook that holds only launch ideas. Symbols are cues that quicken the transition from hedonic drift to focused making. They reduce friction and increase ritual. The more deliberate the symbol, the less argument is needed to begin. So rise early with intent. Protect the first hour with the ferocity of a general defending the province that contains the only spring. Keep distractions locked. Clarify the single mission. Speak your completion into being, and move with the calculated hunger of someone who understands that life will not politely hand you the title. You must manufacture it. Win the first hour, and you will notice how the day, once a thrashing beast, becomes a willing instrument. Your calendar will no longer be a list of interruptions, but a sequence of sovereign acts. The rest of the world will adapt to your cadence because you have proved in the smallest daily evidence that you finish. Now stand, breathe, and do the first thing that finishes something real today. You have already built a foundation. Now build the architecture that refuses to wobble. The work of a lifetime is not a single heroic act, but the relentless application of small, deliberate choices that compound until they become destiny. Picture Edison not as a romantic tinkerer, but as a man running an industrial cadence of experiments. Each failure a ledger entry, each success a legal precedent. Picture Lincoln at the bedside lamp, making choices that were invisible except for their consequences. Success is a ledger, not a sermon. If you want to be undeniable, start keeping accounts that cannot be disputed. A public list of small completions, a tangible archive that proves you show up when the noise says otherwise. Make the life you live auditable. When your actions can be read like transactions, the world will stop asking for promises and begin to trade on your reputation. Make your environment evidence. The room you enter must be set up to make the productive choice, the easiest one. If your bed is the first place your hand lands and your phone the second, you have designed for surrender. Rearrange the battlefield. Put the thing that matters where the morning hand naturally reaches. Remove friction like a surgeon removing plaque. Every obstacle you remove is energy returned to concentration. A lamp that is only for work, a chair that is only for focus, a folder labeled "Ship on your desk." These are not theatrical props. They are engineered constraints that reduce decisions and increase doing. The fewer arguments you have to win internally, the more capacity you have to win externally. Invite public friction. Accountability is not polite. It is strategic. Tell one person the truth about your timeline and give them permission to ask for proof. Better yet, tell 100 people. Public promises create social gravity. Carnegie leveraged introductions not as favors, but as a currency that demanded repayment through action. When you make your intent visible, excuses become expensive. If the market knows you are trying, it will offer feedback. If your friends know, they will demand receipts. Use social exposure like a machine that grinds flaccid intention into workable commitments. Hoard your words. Language is not merely decorative. It is the blueprint of your future behavior. Stop saying, "I'll try," and start saying, "I will ship." Replace ambiguous verbs with deadlines and numbers. The nervous system does not register improve the way it registers publish by Friday at 10 a.m. Make your speech surgical. It will force your calendar to obey. Napoleon Hill taught autosuggestion as a way to program destiny. Apply that lesson with tactical grammar. Speak only the contracts you intend to enforce, and then treat your own language as an auditor treats a balance sheet. Update it honestly. Correct slippage, and never sign a promise you are not willing to be audited on. Learn to deploy scarcity like an artist. When everything is available, nothing is chosen. Create constraints that force meaning. Limit the number of projects this quarter. Limit the audience you serve initially. Limit the tools you will employ. Constraints focus imagination and amplify quality. The first great products were almost always born from limitation. A tiny team, little cash, a sharp necessity. Constraint is creative pressure. It calls forth the brilliant economy of resources. Make scarcity your ally rather than your excuse. Turn gratitude into a tactical playbook. Gratitude should not be a fuzzy feeling reserved for private notebooks. It should be a ledger of leverage that guides investment. List the people who have already said yes, the skills you have sharpened to a usable edge, the small reserves of capital you can deploy. Map those assets to experiments that require exactly what you have. Carnegie's generosity was not random. It was a targeted investment. When you thank someone publicly, attach a small ask or an invitation. Generosity then becomes a velocity tool. The more visible your thank, use, the more your social capital multiplies into returns. Treat fear like data, not deity. Fear will manufacture reasons to wait. It will dress carefulness in the clothes of wisdom. Interrogate fear with questions. What is the real probability of the outcome you dread? What is the actual timeline of the worst-case scenario? What can you control? When you answer these, fear is reduced to variables you can test. Use small experiments to demystify the imagined catastrophes. Launch to 100 people at a reduced price. Ask for critique from 3 ruthless reviewers. You will be surprised at how often the monster is merely a shadow cast by your imagination. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is the ability to gather data while your hands shake. Master the art of repair. Resilience is not a posture of denial, but a protocol. When things break, have a triage plan, immediate emotional clearing, a tactical post, mortem, a corrective test, and a public note that records what happened and what will change. The public note matters. It transforms private failure into communal learning and prevents paralysis. Lincoln did not wallow, he annotated. Edison did not lament. He documented. Make your recovery faster than regret. The quicker you move from pain to experiment, the less power setbacks have to derail you. Every habit is a vote for the person you want to become. Choose your votes wisely. The small acts, writing 1 paragraph, making 1 call, sending 1 pitch, are the ballots you cast daily for your future identity. Keep the vote count in front of you. If you want to be a writer, you must vote for writing daily. If you want to be an entrepreneur, you must vote for experiments. Identity is not declared in slogans. It is served in repetition. Your morning ritual is the precinct where those votes are counted. Teach what you learn. The fastest way to master a concept is to explain it to another human being. Make teaching part of your cycle. Learn, apply, teach, iterate. Public teaching not only clarifies your thinking, it creates a swarm of critique that sharpens your work faster than solitary rumination. The person who hoards ideas is slow. The person who offers them in the market becomes indispensable. Use content not as validation, but as an experimental tool to accelerate learning and invite correction. Build strategic friendships, not comfortable crowds. The people you surround yourself with will either extend your range or normalize your excuses. Seek those who are slightly uncomfortable for you, people who ask hard questions, who expect results, who will steal your complacency and replace it with pressure. Masterminds are not cheerleading squads. They are pressure chambers. When honest peers critique you, they do you a kindness. Choose discomfort as the price of growth. Finally, leverage time as your greatest ally. Small wins compound into authority. The person who finishes 1 small thing every day will, over years, become someone the market knows will finish. Napoleon Hill spoke of definite purpose, today that translates into daily habits and public receipts. Make the first hour sovereign, yes, but extend that sovereignty across weeks and months. Set quarterly metrics, you measure weekly. Let the cadence of your mornings feed a larger tempo of sustained action. Work with the patience of someone who knows that compound results are invisible until they are inevitable. Now, this is not an invitation to ease. It is a demand. Choose one tangible, auditable thing and finish it within 7 days. Make the promise public to at least one person who will ask for the receipt. Design a morning ritual to start it. Reduce decision friction. Create a symbol. Ship the proof. Do it once, and your nervous system will record a truth you cannot plausibly deny. You are the kind of person who finishes. Repeat until completion is ordinary, until the office calls you about your next move rather than you calling it for permission. The day bows not to those who wish, but to those who produce. Win the first hour. Win the habit. Win the life. Start now. Do the single smallest act that yields a visible receipt, and then do it again tomorrow. You have learned to defend the first hour. Now learn to weaponize the second. Those rolling minutes that turn stubborn intention into unarguable momentum. The secret is not more willpower. It is better design. We honor the sunrise with ritual, but the world will test your resolve in the gray between the morning's promise and the afternoon's excuses. This is where plans die, at the margin of choice, where the comfortable option nudges you and the important task asks for discomfort. Do not mistake motion for mastery. Edison moved with purpose because he engineered his days to reveal truth quickly. Ford succeeded because he built systems that did the heavy lifting of discipline. You must build systems that make the hard choice, the default choice that convert your good intentions into unavoidable acts. Imagine a machine where each gear is a habit, and each habit is geared to one relentless output: completion. Start by identifying the one metric that will decide the season for you: revenue prototype, first customers, pages finished, and make everything else subordinate. Clarity is not a clever phrase. It is a surgical instrument that carves away the incidental. Reverse engineer that metric until you strip the day down to the handful of moves that actually move it. If content converts at one rate and outreach at another, pour fuel into outreach until its marginal return diminishes. If one headline sells and another fails, repeat the winner until the market speaks differently. The brave do not scatter energy. They concentrate it until the improbable becomes inevitable. Make your commitments public, not to boast, but to create social friction. Napoleon Hill described mastermind groups where accountability became a force as real as capital. Use the modern equivalent: a recorded weekly update, a pinned post, a small circle that refuses excuses. The market will not hand you permission. It lends it to those who produce evidence. Tell one person the exact deliverable and time. Then make the cost of failure personal. Put $1 on the line. Ask for blunt honesty. Invite a shame. Free audit. Do whatever makes evasion expensive. When obligation is visible, inertia becomes costly, and action becomes rational. Language will continue to be your most powerful instrument. Replace soft verbs with finished ones. I'll try becomes I will ship. Someday becomes Friday, 10 a.m. Speak with the grammar of completion, because grammar organizes the nervous system. Napoleon Hill taught autosuggestion not as magic but as engineering for belief. Modern practice is to read out the finished report as if it already exists, to describe the exact headline, the feel of the first payment hit, the currency in the inbox. Let your voice narrate the completed scene and watch the body rearrange around that narrative. The mind always resolves dissonance. Give it a plausible reality. It can close the gap toward. Fear will attempt to disguise itself as prudence. It will list plausible catastrophes and sprinkle them with statistics to sound sensible. But fear is often a rehearsed tragedy without evidence. When it comes, interrogate it with instruments. What is the true probability? What is controllable? What is the smallest test that would expose the truth? If you are terrified a launch will tank, run the offer to 100 skeptical strangers and read their responses. If you fear rejection, ask 3 people for brutal feedback. You will find most fears are cartoons. The real problems are specific and solvable. Courage is not the absence of fear, but the discipline to gather data while your hands are shaking. Treat fatigue as a technical problem, not a moral one. The person who confuses exhaustion with virtue is often mistaking motion for meaning. Design energy systems, predictable sleep windows, protein first in the morning, micro movement between sessions, and sunlight to regulate circadian rhythm. Artists of endurance build reserves before they need them. When you protect your baseline, the spikes of demand become manageable rather than catastrophic. Discipline without physical infrastructure is brittle. Build stamina, like you build systems, methodically and with foresight. Turn learning into production. The guilty habit of endless absorbing without applying is a luxury disguised as growth. The fastest learners in history, engineers, inventors, thinkers, did not hoard ideas, they tested them. Read a chapter, extract one hypothesis, and prove it within a week. Teach what you test. The act of explaining compresses thought and exposes error. Edison taught by doing. He invented in public by letting failure be the scaffold for iteration. Use that model, small, visible tests that force feedback, and then hammer the lesson into the next cycle. Design constraints to provoke genius. Scarcity is not a curse. It is a sharpening stone. Set absurd deadlines. Reduce the feature set. Limit the platforms. Constraints cut through the paralysis of choice and force you to invent. The first Disney sketches were napkin. Rue because scarcity of polish forced clarity of idea. The first cars rolled off Ford's line because he limited complexity until motion became reliable. Learn to love limitation. It will coax creativity from you like a blacksmith coaxes shape from raw metal. Build alliances like infrastructure. Nobody achieves a meaningful result in isolation. Your dream will live in the space between people, mentors, collaborators, customers. Cultivate relationships with intent. Give before you ask, create visible exchanges, and hold others to their promises with the gentleness of someone invested in mutual performance. Carnegie's introductions were not social niceties. They were strategic loans that demanded repayment through value. When you nurture relationships with reciprocity, you create a web of favor that accelerates action when you need it most. Failure must be domesticated. The greatest innovators treated failure as raw material, data to be harvested and analyzed. When an experiment fails, document the variables, isolate the factors, and run a corrective mini-test within 48 hours. Resilience is a system for shortening the half-life of despair. Lincoln rebounded because he turned defeat into a lesson plan, not an obituary. Edison rebounded because each incandescent failure became a precisely indexed datum toward the solution. Your job is not to avoid failure. It is to make it cheap, fast, and instructive. Value rituals that mark transitions. Symbols are not superstition. They are accelerants. Wear a jacket that signifies work. Light a lamp that announces production. Keep a notebook that only holds ship ideas. These tiny markers create unmistakable cues for the brain. When the jacket goes on, the self that hesitates must stand down. Rituals reduce cognitive load and convert intention into action. Make them simple, repeatable, and non-negotiable. Keep a public ledger of receipts. The world trusts what it can see. Publish weekly updates. Post the imperfect prototypes. Record the conversations. The ledger does something vital. It reduces your future capacity to lie to yourself. When a community sees your steady artifacts, it begins to invest time and opportunity in you because you show evidence of follow-through. Napoleon Hill's definiteness of purpose becomes modern currency. When your commitments are there for others to audit, protect your attention like a rare ore. Smartphones are engineered to fragment your mind. Reclaim that commodity. Create strict protocols. No social in the first 2 hours. Inbox triage only twice a day. A 30-minute block of deep work before any meeting. The quality of your output is a function of the quality of your attention. Cut the small leaks that drain it. The person who controls attention controls outcomes. Make sacrifice intentional, not performative. Sacrifice without architecture is melodrama. If you forego pleasure, do it for a specified outcome with a deadline. Make the cost explicit and the reward contractual. When the sacrifice has a reason and a time, it is bearable and heroic rather than impotent. People like Lincoln and Ford did not romanticize deprivation. They timed it. They sacrificed for a season and then reclaimed abundance because their sacrifice was catalytic, not chronic. Finally, learn to close cycles. A half-done project is a hanging weight on your psychology. Finish small things to build the muscle of completion. Ship the first version, then the second. Each finished artifact teaches a lesson, pays a debt, and frees you for the next escalation. Completion compounds credibility. The person who finishes is the person the world consults, invests in, and follows. Pick one measurable thing you will finish in the next 72 hours. Make the promise public to a single uncompromising witness. Design a 2-hour morning ritual to start it. Set the constraints that force creativity and schedule the tiny recovery routines to protect your energy. Then ship the thing and publish the receipt. Do this until finishing is as ordinary as brushing your teeth. The day bows not to the fervent wish, but to the finished page. The signed contract, the shipped product, win the first hour. Then win the margin where resolve becomes habit. And the season of your life will bend toward your design. You have learned to claim the first hour and to weaponize the margin where most plans die. Now make every day a factory that manufactures inevitabilities. Imagine a shipyard where every rivet, every bolt, every plank is placed in a sequence so precise that the hull cannot help but become a ship. That is what discipline feels like when it is properly organized. Not the theatrical suffering of a martyr, but the engineering of progress. The great builders, Edison with his ledger of failures, Ford with his unforgiving schedules, Disney sketching futures, until investors could smell the park, did not rely on inspiration. They designed systems that produced outputs regardless of mood. Your job is not to wait for willpower to arrive. It is to build the apparatus where willpower's absence matters far less. Make the work default. Make the productive choice, the easiest, the visible choice, the normal one, the path of least resistance, the one that delivers completion. This is accomplished first through ruthless prioritization. Choose the metric that will decide the season and make it the tyrant of your calendar. If revenue will keep you afloat this quarter, everything else is tributary to the activities that create income. If reach matters, reverse engineer the distribution that produces it and then force yourself to repeat the high return content until the audience signal changes. Don't be seduced by variety. Variety is the refuge of the unfocused. The human mind wants novel tasks because novelty masks sloth. The disciplined mind chooses repetition because repetition accumulates authority. Edison tested the filament 1,000 times because 1,000 small repetitions rearranged nature into obedience. The day you accept repetition as your ally is the day the market begins to take you seriously. Make your commitments visible, not to brag, but to mortgage your avoidance. Public promises are financial instruments against procrastination. Tell one stubborn person the exact deliverable in time and ask them to ask for proof. Better yet, tell a small crowd, post a public update, pin a progress thread, schedule a live reveal. Social friction is more effective than private guilt because it runs on other people's expectations. Not your ephemeral shame. Carnegie didn't simply help people. He introduced them publicly, creating social obligations that multiplied. When you make your intent visible, you borrow the world's capacity to hold you to your word. Keep language surgical. Replace "I'll try" with "I will ship this by Friday at 10 a.m." Replace Work on with finish the first draft, send 5 proposals, close 1 sale. Speak in numbers, not feelings. The grammar you use sculpts the day. Napoleon Hill taught autosuggestion precisely because sentence structure directs attention. Modern application strips the poetry and keeps the machinery. When your sentences are precise, your brain finds the steps and your calendar becomes a contract rather than a suggestion. Build micro-recovery systems. Resilience is not stoic endurance. It is the ability to repair quickly. When a plan derails, have a pre-designed triage, 60 minutes of breathing and recalibration, 24 hours to hypothesize the cause, 48 hours to test a corrective, and a week to either relaunch or decommission. Make emotional processing real but time. Bound, Lincoln recovered from political catastrophe by reading, by reframing, by acting quickly on lessons, not by wallowing. Edison kept notebooks. He documented, analyzed, and iterated. You must do the same. When recovery is procedural, setbacks shrink. They become chapters in a play you are writing, not tombstones on a road you abandoned. Learn in public. The fastest growth loop is learn, apply, teach, iterate. Consume fewer books, but extract more experiments. Read a chapter and convert it into a test within 7 days. Teach what you tested the day after. The act of teaching forces clarity and exposes contradiction. Disney's earliest patrons learned from rough prototypes. The feedback made ideas sharper. When you expose your learning to the market, you compress the cycle between discovery and mastery. Your speed of application will outpace the noise of those who only admire knowledge. Curate your environment like a museum curates a masterpiece. Every visible object should either incite work or be absent. A lamp that is only switched on for production, a pen reserved for first drafts, a jacket worn only when shipping. These are not affectations, but neurological shortcuts. The brain loves cues. It craves patterns. Make the pattern unmistakable. The fewer decisions you have to make in the morning, the more energy you will have for the one decision that matters, finishing. Remove the traps. No social apps until a task is complete. Notifications off during work blocks. A workspace that signals purpose. The environment will support you or sabotage you. Choose to design it. Cultivate a hunger for constraints. Limitation is the blacksmith of brilliance. Give yourself impossible deadlines, tiny budgets, peculiar rules. Forcing constraints directs creativity. Ford limited options in his models to streamline production. Disney simplified experiences to extract wonder without waste. Constraints stop you from dithering and force you to invent. If you struggle to start, shrink the scope so small you cannot refuse to begin. Momentum solved many immobility problems simply because it started. Treat gratitude as tactical rather than quaint. List the people who have offered help, the skills you've already mastered, the small capital you control. Convert that list into action. Make a public thank. You that also serves as a bridge. Thanks to X. I'd love to get your feedback on this prototype, or because ye showed me Z. I am launching this trial. Generosity that is targeted is a form of leverage. Carnegie's introductions were a methodical investment. Mimic that economy. Use gratitude to multiply social capital into opportunity. Manage fear with experiments, not sermons. Fear argues for delay. Experiments demand truth. When dread arrives, design a micro test that yields evidence within days. If you are frightened a product will fail, offer it to a small, honest audience at a low price and track behavior. If you fear rejection, ask for critique from 3 ruthless confidants. The fiction of catastrophe collapses under the weight of data courage. Then is procedural. It is the discipline to test while trembling. Invest in durable energy systems. Stamina is not heroic suffering. It is logistics. Regular sleep, prioritize nutrition, movement rituals between work sessions. These are the non-negotiable inputs that allow your sharper moments to exist. The exhausted mind is a poor mechanic. It misreads signals, clings to comfort, and chooses the easy denial of action. When you protect your body with the same rigor, you protect your calendar. Your decision quality improves, and the cost of courage falls. Make the smallest wins public and collect them like coins. Finish a page, publish a short video, send one pitch. Each public artifact compounds trust. The world trades in proof. A weekly ledger of what you shipped calibrates how others give you attention and resources. Napoleon Hill talked about definiteness of purpose. Today, that definiteness is validated through visible output. When your ledger is consistent, people begin to bet on you. Build a circle that lifts rather than lulls. Seek peers who are 5% sharper, who demand better, who will steal your excuses and replace them with deadlines. Masterminds are not echo chambers. They are pressure chambers where blunt feedback is routine. Choose friends who make the comfortable uncomfortable, because discomfort is the currency of improvement. Endure by finishing. The person who completes small things gains the psychological advantage of credibility. Completion breeds clarity. It frees cognitive load. It proves methods. It creates momentum. A finished prototype is more powerful than 50 unrealized ideas. Finish one thing, publish the evidence, then do it again. The nervous system learns through receipts. Once you prove to yourself you finish, your future behavior reshapes to support completion. Now decide. Pick one measurable sensory task that, when finished, will change the shape of your week. Make it public to one person who will not accept an excuse. Design a 30-minute ritual to start each morning that pushes you toward that task. Create constraints that force action, set an absurd but possible deadline, and promise the world you'll show proof. Then ship, then record the result, then iterate. Do this until finishing is your identity, until the day bows because you have trained it to, until people stop asking for permission because your ledger is loud enough to demand outcomes. This is not a motivational flourish. It is a program. Implement it like a machine, and the machine will produce your life.